Could you survive a Roman battle? Find out now. Roman soldiers in action. Would you survive a Roman battle? Imagine being surrounded by hundreds of warriors, the ground shaking under the weight of the marching legions, the metallic sound of shields clashing, and the tension in the air about to explode into combat. There's no room for hesitation. Every movement, every order, every formation could mean the difference between glory and death. Now think, would you have the courage, discipline, and strategy to face the battlefield like a true Roman soldier? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover now might surprise you. In this video, we'll delve into the combat tactics and military strategies that transformed the Roman Empire into an unbeatable power for centuries. And we're not just talking about brute force. The Romans mastered the art of war with intelligence, precision, and an organization that still inspires modern armed forces. The testudo formation, for example, wasn't just a defensive technique. It was a veritable human wall, capable of withstanding hailstorms of arrows and advancing steadily against the enemy. Have you ever heard of it? If not, prepare to learn about one of the most ingenious maneuvers in military history. But it doesn't stop there. The flanking maneuvers, masterfully executed by the legions, reveal how well the Romans knew how to exploit the terrain, confuse the enemy, and turn the tide even in unfavorable situations. Have you ever experienced this? That feeling of being surrounded, with no way out, and then someone comes up with an unexpected solution? It's precisely this kind of strategic thinking that made Roman generals true masters of war. And speaking of masters, we can't ignore the impressive organization of the legions. Each soldier knew exactly where to be, what to do, and how to react to any threat. There was no room for improvisation. Everything was calculated, rehearsed, and executed with almost superhuman discipline. The structure of the legions, with their centuries, cohorts, and experienced commanders, functioned like a perfect machine, where each piece played a vital role. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live under this level of coordination and responsibility? What's most fascinating is realizing that, even with limited resources compared to today's standards, the Romans managed to win complex battles, conquer vast territories, and maintain control over diverse populations. This was only possible thanks to a combination of efficient combat tactics, well-planned military strategies, and a culture of discipline that shaped each warrior from training to the battlefield. And if you think all this is a thing of the past, think again. Many of the techniques we'll see here still influence modern military thought. The testudo formation, for example, inspired protective methods in urban operations. Flanking maneuvers continue to be used in contemporary conflicts. And the organization of the Roman legions? Well, it's still studied today in military academies around the world. So, if you're passionate about the Roman Empire, admire the bravery of Roman warriors, or simply want to understand how strategic intelligence can change the course of a battle, this video is for you. Get ready to visualize the battlefield like never before, understand the movements behind victories, and experience the weight of a military decision firsthand. Now that you're on the battlefield, it's time to move forward. Let's explore step by step how these tactics worked in practice and why they were crucial to Rome's rise as one of the greatest powers in history. And as you visualize all this, the shields rising in perfect synchrony, the soldiers advancing like a living wall, the flanks moving with surgical precision, perhaps something inside you will begin to awaken, a sense of wonder, a curiosity, or even a question. How is it possible that an army from 2,000 years ago can still teach us so much about strategy, courage, and leadership? If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what's touched you most so far. It could be a memory, a reflection, or even a question that's arisen. Your opinion is an essential part of this conversation, and it's what transforms this video into something alive, vibrant, and beyond the screen. By the way, if you're enjoying this journey through the world of Roman warriors, please leave a like. This really helps keep this content active and relevant, and shows that it's worth continuing to explore this fascinating world with you by my side. And of course, if you want to keep watching videos like this, with epic stories, ingenious tactics, and interesting facts few know, subscribe to the channel. Your participation is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. People who, like you, have a thirst for knowledge and a passion for history. Now, take a deep breath, because what comes next will put you even deeper into the battlefield. The Roman legions weren't just groups of armed soldiers. They were veritable war machines, shaped by a collective mentality that transformed ordinary men into ruthless warriors. When we talk about the Roman Empire, it's impossible not to think of brute force and territorial expansion, but what underpinned all of this was something much deeper, a military structure that operated with surgical precision, almost like a living organism. No ancient army matched the precision of the Roman legions, and that's no exaggeration. It was a rare combination of discipline, training, and organization that ensured every battle was won before it even began. A legionary's journey began long before stepping onto the battlefield. The training was exhausting, repetitive, almost cruel, but absolutely necessary. Marches of dozens of kilometers with a full load, combat simulations, physical and mental endurance exercises, all of this not only strengthened the body but also shaped the mind. The transformation was visible. Fear gave way to strategy, instinct to obedience, and hesitation to coordinated action. Each soldier knew exactly their place, their role, and the impact their decision would have on the collective. There was no room for improvisation. The hidden truth behind Roman glory was this: victory depended on the ability to act as one. And this organization wasn't just internal. The legions were divided into centuries, led by experienced centurions who knew every man under their command. Above them were the cohorts, and above the cohorts, the legion commanders. It was a clear, functional hierarchy, where communication flowed quickly and efficiently. Behind the scenes of major campaigns, there was an impressive logistical system. Supplies, reinforcements, deployment strategies, all planned in advance. It was as if each battle were a chessboard, and the Romans always played several moves ahead. The impact of this structure was devastating to their enemies. Disorganized tribes, improvised armies, impulsive leaders, all succumbed to the legion's strategic coolness. And it wasn't just physical strength. It was their ability to make quick decisions, adapt to the terrain, and maintain formation even under intense attack. The discipline was so profound that, even amidst the chaos, the soldiers maintained their composure. This created an aura of invincibility that often demoralized the enemy before the first strike. But there's something even more fascinating about all this. The organization of the legions wasn't just for war. It reflected a Roman mentality that valued order, hierarchy, and purpose. It was as if each battle were an extension of society itself, a society that believed in the strength of the collective, the importance of preparation, and the superiority of reason over impulse. And perhaps that's why, even today, so many scholars, strategists, and history buffs continue to turn their eyes to Rome, because there, among shields and gladiuses, lay a wisdom that transcends time. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding how these formations behaved in action reveals not only the technique, but also the soul of the Roman warrior, the way they positioned themselves, how they reacted to orders, how they moved together. All of this holds revelations about leadership, courage, and decision-making under pressure. Write down, I'm on this. Journey 2. If this dive into the strategic minds of the legions makes sense to you, now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the testudo formation is like opening a window into the strategic mindset that guided every step of the Roman legions. It wasn't just a defensive technique. It was a true statement of military intelligence, collective discipline, and mastery of the combat space. The word testudo, which in Latin means turtle, already reveals a lot about the logic behind this formation. Imagine dozens of soldiers grouping together in such a coordinated manner that their shields, positioned in front and above, created a solid and impenetrable structure, like a turtle's shell. It was a mobile wall, capable of advancing under a hail of arrows, stones, and even spears, without losing cohesion. This formation was especially used in sieges, or when the army needed to cross exposed areas under intense ranged attack. The front shields protected the eye, soldiers in the front line, while the upper shields covered those behind. The visual impact was impressive, a compact, uniform mass advancing slowly, but with absolute certainty. And the most fascinating thing is that, even under pressure, each man knew exactly where he should be, how to move and what to do. There was no room for improvisation or hesitation. It was the perfect execution of a collective decision, where individual instinct was replaced by the logic of the formation. Behind this, technique lay something even more powerful: trust. Each soldier trusted the other to hold their position, hold their shield, and protect their flanks. This trust wasn't born by chance, but by rigorous training, by a culture of discipline that shaped behavior from the earliest days in the army. The testudo formation didn't function solely through physical structure. It depended on group mentality, the ability to act as one body, with a single goal. And this alone reveals much about the psychological impact the Romans had on their enemies. Seeing a testudo approaching was like watching a living wall, determined to break through any obstacle. The hidden truth behind this technique is that it wasn't just defensive. In many cases, the testudo was used as a bridge to attack. When approaching walls, towers, or enemy positions, soldiers could protect themselves until the last moment, and then break formation to invade with full force. It was a strategy of approach, of infiltration, of controlling time and space. And this shows how the Romans thought beyond the obvious. Every movement had multiple layers of intention. Every formation carried a logic that went far beyond appearances. This ability to transform shields into mobile walls, to use the body as a tool of war, to blindly trust in the collective structure, reveals a journey of transformation that few armies have been able to replicate. The testudo was not just a technique, it was a symbol of the Roman mentality: rational, disciplined, and relentless. And perhaps that's why, even today, this formation still fascinates historians, strategists, and epic battle enthusiasts. Because it represents something greater than war. It represents the strength of unity, preparation, and conscious decision-making amidst chaos. Comment below: this makes sense to me, if this view of the testudo made you see the Roman war in a different light. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about flanking maneuvers, we're entering the realm of military cunning, where brute force gives way to strategic intelligence. The Romans didn't win battles with shields and swords alone. They won with calculated decisions, with reading the terrain, with the ability to see beyond the obvious. Flanking, in essence, is attacking from the sides, surprising the enemy where they least expect it. But in practice, it's much more than that. It's an art, a revelation about how to think outside the front line can completely change the course of a confrontation. Imagine being in the middle of a battle with the enemy in front of you, confident, focused, believing the fight will be straightforward. Suddenly, without warning, a Roman force appears from the flank, breaking the formation, destabilizing the line, and creating chaos. It is at this moment that the advantage shifts. The psychological impact is devastating. The feeling of being surrounded, of not knowing where the next blow will come from, disarms even the most experienced. And the Romans knew this. They used the flank as a tool of disorientation, as a way to break the enemy's logic and take control of the battle narrative. Behind the scenes of these maneuvers, meticulous preparation took place. Nothing was done impulsively. Roman commanders studied the terrain, observed their opponent's movement patterns, and identified vulnerable points. And then, with almost surgical precision, they positioned their troops to create the illusion of direct confrontation. While the real attack came from the edges, it was a silent dance between deception and execution. And most impressively, even amidst the chaos, the soldiers maintained formation, followed orders, and knew exactly when to act. This was only possible because of the collective mindset that shaped every decision. The hidden truth behind flanking maneuvers is that they reveal a lot about leadership. A good Roman commander wasn't just one who shouted orders. He was one who saw the invisible, who anticipated movements, who understood human behavior under pressure. He knew that fear sets in when the enemy loses their bearings, when they can no longer predict the next move. And it is in this space of uncertainty that victory begins to take shape. The flanking maneuver wasn't just a tactical move. It was a way to dominate the emotional battlefield. This strategic approach also teaches us something valuable about decision-making. Often, the most direct path isn't the most effective. Sometimes you have to circumvent, observe, and wait for the right moment. And this applies not only to wars but to any journey of transformation. The Romans show us that thinking laterally, acting intelligently, and remaining calm under pressure can be the key to overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles. It's a lesson that spans centuries and remains relevant today. Write down, "This makes sense to me," if this insight into flanking maneuvers has given you a deeper understanding of Roman strategy. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the organization of the Roman legions is like opening the doors to a war machine that operated with almost supernatural precision. It wasn't just a group of soldiers marching together. It was a structure thought out down to the smallest detail, where each man knew exactly his role, his position, and the impact of his actions within a larger system. It was like a Swiss watch, only Roman and deadly. The basis of this mechanism was the century, composed of about 80 soldiers led by a centurion. This commander was not just a leader, he was the direct link between the soldiers and the larger strategy. He knew the names, fears, and abilities of each man under his command. And more than that, he was responsible for maintaining discipline, ensuring compliance with orders, and inspiring respect. Above the centuries came the cohorts, which brought together several centuries under an intermediate leader. And finally, the full legion, which could exceed 5,000 men, all organized into layers of command that allowed for rapid and effective communication, even amid the chaos of battle. This structure prevented collapse. While other armies disorganized under pressure, the Roman legions maintained their formation, adjusted positions, and reacted logically. It was as if each soldier were a cell in a larger organism, trained to function in harmony with the whole. And this was no accident. The training was constant, repetitive, almost ritualistic. Long marches, combat simulations, physical and mental endurance exercises, all to ensure that at the decisive moment, there would be no doubt, hesitation, or disorder. Behind the scenes of this organization, there was a mentality that went beyond warfare. The Romans believed in order as a principle of power. The legion was a reflection of Roman society, hierarchical, disciplined, guided by duty and honor. Every role, no matter how small, had a clear purpose. From the frontline soldier to the auxiliaries responsible for supplies, everyone knew that their actions influenced the final outcome, and this created a sense of belonging, a collective consciousness that made the group stronger than any single individual. The impact of this structure was visible on the battlefield. While the enemy moved haphazardly, driven by impulses or fragile leadership, the Romans advanced like a living wall, adjusting formations, responding to commands, adapting strategies in real time. It was a dance of precision, where every step was calculated, every movement had intention, and this not only increased military effectiveness, it also had a devastating psychological effect. Seeing a legion approaching was like witnessing the arrival of an organized, inevitable, unstoppable storm. The hidden truth behind this organization is that it didn't just serve war. It molded men. It transformed citizens into soldiers, soldiers into leaders, leaders into symbols of a culture that valued preparation, clarity of purpose, and the ability to make decisions under pressure. It was a journey of transformation that began in training and was revealed on the battlefield. And perhaps that's why, even today, the structure of the legions is still studied, admired, and replicated in different contexts, because it represents something that goes beyond strength. It represents intelligence applied to action. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. If this view on the organization of the legions made you see Roman warfare as a true science of strategy. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about the training of Roman warriors, we're not just describing a grueling physical routine. We're delving into the essence of the mentality that shaped each soldier. The Roman warrior's DNA was forged not just by strength, but by discipline. And this discipline, curiously, was feared more than the enemy itself. It wasn't fear of the enemy's sword that kept the soldiers in line. It was absolute respect for orders, for hierarchy, for the structure that supported the legion as a whole. Training began early and left no room for weakness. Marches of dozens of kilometers with full armament, endurance exercises in scorching heat, combat simulations in which mistakes weren't just corrected, they were punished. The idea was simple and brutal. If you hesitate here, you die there. And this created a profound transformation. The body. Adapted, of course, but it was the mind that changed most. The soldier learned to obey without question, to react without thinking, to trust command even in the face of death. Could you follow orders without hesitation, even in the face of death? This question isn't just provocative, it reveals the hidden truth behind Roman strength. What made an army victorious wasn't just its ability to attack, but its ability to hold together under pressure. And this was only possible because each man there had gone through a journey of breaking and rebuilding. The training wasn't just physical, it was psychological, it was emotional, it was preparation for the worst, for the unpredictable, for the moment when everything could fall apart. And yet, the formation had to hold. Behind the scenes of this routine, there was also a system of internal surveillance. The centurions were not just leaders, they were guardians of discipline. They observed, corrected, punished, and above all, maintained the standard. A soldier who broke formation put everyone at risk, and this created a sense of collective responsibility that went beyond the instinct for survival. It was a culture of honor, duty, and belonging. The soldier didn't fight just for himself. He fought for the group, the legion, the empire. The impact of this was visible in every battle. While other armies disorganized in fear, the Romans maintained their composure. They advanced silently, in sync, as if guided by an invisible force. And that force was discipline. It was the training that had taught each man to trust the other, to hold the line, to not retreat. It was the fruit of hard decisions, of a relentless routine, of a transformation that began in the body and ended in the soul. This approach teaches us something that goes far beyond war. In any journey, be it personal, professional, or emotional, discipline is what sustains progress. It's what keeps us going when everything seems to be falling apart. And the Romans knew this. They didn't just train to win, they trained to resist, to endure, to maintain structure even when the world around them screamed for chaos. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If this insight into the training and discipline of Roman warriors made you reflect on the power of preparation and constancy. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we look at the weapons and equipment used by Roman warriors, we're not just looking at combat tools. We're looking at engineering designed to create impact, control the battlefield, and even manipulate the enemy's psyche. Nothing was accidental. Every piece, every detail, every choice reflected a strategic mindset that went far beyond physical strength. The Romans knew that winning a war began long before the first blow. It began with how they presented themselves, how they protected themselves, and how they attacked. The gladius, for example, was the short sword that became a symbol of the Roman warrior. Compact, lightweight, and extremely effective in close combat. Unlike the long swords used by other peoples, the gladius allowed for rapid movement, precise thrusts, and complete control within a formation. It was a weapon designed to function within the logic of the legion, where space was limited and synchronization was vital. The soldier didn't need breadth, he needed efficiency, and the gladius delivered this perfectly. The shield, called a scutum, was more than a physical barrier. It was an extension of the body, a tool for protection and attack at the same time. Large, curved, and sturdy, the shield allowed soldiers to defend themselves from arrows, spears, and direct blows, but it could also be used to push back the enemy, open space, and maintain a cohesive formation. Together with the shields of their companions, it created veritable mobile walls, as seen in the testudo formation. And most interestingly, the shield wasn't just a defense, it was a statement of presence. When the Romans advanced with their shields raised, the visual impact was as strong as the physical. But perhaps the most curious example is the pilum. At first glance, it looks like just a spear, but in practice, it was a psychological trick. The pilum had an iron tip designed to bend when it hit the enemy's shield. This caused the spear to become stuck, rendering the shield useless and forcing the opponent to discard it. In other words, the pilum was not just a weapon, it was a strategy to disarm, destabilize, and open gaps in the enemy's defense. What's more, The fact that the enemy knew their shield could be compromised even before hand-to-hand combat created anticipatory tension. It was as if the Romans were already winning before they even approached. Behind these choices lay a logic of adaptation. The Romans didn't create weapons just to impress. They created them to solve specific problems. If the enemy used large shields, they created spears that rendered them useless. If combat required agility, they fashioned short swords. If the formation needed collective protection, they designed shields that fit together like puzzle pieces. It was a solution-oriented mentality, of reading the scenario, of purpose-driven decisions. And this reveals a lot about the impact these technologies had, not only physically, but also emotionally. This approach shows us that true strength lies not only in the power of a weapon, but in the intention behind it. The Romans understood that every detail could influence the outcome of a battle. And this teaches us something valuable. When you align your tools with your strategy, when every choice has a reason, the result is much more powerful. It's a lesson that applies to any journey, be it military, personal, or professional. Comment below. This makes sense to me if this view of Roman weapons and equipment made you see war as an art of intelligent decisions. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is in real battles that all these tactics come to life, become tangible, and reveal the true impact of Roman strategy. We are no longer talking just about theory, but about decisions that change the course of history, moments when discipline, training, and tactical intelligence became the fine line between victory and collapse. And few battles illustrate this as clearly as Alesia and Zama. The Battle of Alesia, fought in 52 BC, is an almost cinematic example of Roman strategic genius. Julius Caesar, faced with a fortress surrounded by Gallic forces led by Vercingetorix, not only laid siege to the city, he built a double line of fortifications, one facing inward to prevent enemy escape, and the other facing outward to contain reinforcements attempting to break the siege. It was a bold, nearly impossible move, but executed with precision. The Roman soldiers, organized into their legions, held their position for weeks, facing both external and internal attacks, resisting with discipline and using formations like the testudo to protect themselves under a hail of arrows and desperate charges. It was at this moment that the testudo formation saved hundreds of lives. The human wall advanced, retreated, adapted, and in the end, victory came not through strength alone. It came through patience, logic, and the ability to maintain its structure even under extreme pressure. At Zama, in 202 BC, the scenario was different, but the challenge was no less. Rome faced Carthage, led by none other than Hannibal, one of the greatest strategists of antiquity. After years of war, the final confrontation took place on African soil, and the Romans, led by Scipio, knew they couldn't win with courage alone. Hannibal brought with him a feared weapon, war elephants, imposing creatures capable of breaking formations and spreading panic. But Scipio was undaunted. He reorganized his legions into open corridors, allowing the elephants to pass without causing destruction. And when the animals became disoriented, the soldiers attacked with precision, regaining control of the field. The Roman formation once again demonstrated its flexibility, its adaptability, and its collective strength. The victory at Zama was not just a territorial conquest. It was a revelation of how well-considered decisions, based on situational awareness and emotional control, can overcome even the greatest challenges. These two episodes are not just historical records. They are vivid portraits of a mindset that valued preparation, clarity of purpose, and coordinated action. Behind the scenes of these battles, there were men who knew that every step, every order, every formation could determine the fate of thousands. And this connects us directly to the idea of impact. Because what the Romans built there was not just an empire, it was a way of thinking, of acting, of facing the unknown with strategy and courage. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. If these battles made you see Roman warfare as a true school of decision-making and tactical intelligence, now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we start comparing Roman military strategies with modern tactics, something surprising happens. We realize that, even with all of today's technology, many of the principles used by the Romans remain alive, functioning, and being taught in military academies around the world. And this is no coincidence. It's a clear sign that they were centuries ahead of their time. The concept of flanking, for example, remains one of the most effective maneuvers in contemporary combat. Whether in land or air operations, or even in digital war simulations, attacking from the sides remains a clever way to destabilize the enemy, and the Romans already knew this. They didn't just apply this technique, they refined it, adapting it to the terrain, the climate, and the disposition of opposing troops. Today, with drones, satellites, and artificial intelligence, modern armies can map the battlefield with precision, but the logic behind the decision to flank remains the same. Surprise, divide, dominate. Another fascinating point is the organization of the troops. The Roman legions, with their centuries and cohorts, functioned as modular units, capable of rapidly reorganizing as needed. This structure is very similar to what we see today in platoons, companies, and battalions. The idea that each group has a specific function, that communication needs to be clear, and that hierarchy must be respected to ensure operational efficiency. All of this was already present over 2,000 years ago, and not only present, but functioning with a precision that is impressive to this day. Behind the scenes of modern strategies, there's also a growing appreciation for discipline and psychological preparation. Today's soldiers undergo intense training, not unlike that which shaped Roman warriors. The difference lies in the resources, of course. Today there are simulators, medical protocols, and psychological support, but the essence remains: to train individuals capable of making decisions under pressure, remaining calm in extreme situations, and acting logically even in the face of chaos. And this is exactly what the Romans sought in their legionaries. The hidden truth that emerges from this comparison is that despite technological advancements, the human factor remains central to strategy. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability. These elements haven't changed. What has changed are the tools. But the mindset, the way of thinking about combat, planning the advance, protecting flanks, and maintaining formation, all of this has deep roots in ancient Rome. And perhaps that's why so many modern military leaders study Roman campaigns with such interest, because there, amid shields and gladiuses, lie lessons that remain relevant, powerful, and transformative. This bridge between past and present shows us that history is not just a record, it's a manual, a silent guide that, when well interpreted, can illuminate decisions, reveal patterns, and inspire new ways of acting. The Romans didn't have satellites, but they had vision. They didn't have computers, but they had logic. And this, in itself, is a revelation about the impact that strategy can have when built with purpose and clarity. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If this connection between Rome and modern strategies made you see history as a living source of wisdom. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because after everything we've explored so far, it's clear that Roman warriors weren't just soldiers. They were strategists in motion, living cogs in a machine that worked with precision, purpose, and impact. Every formation, every weapon, every decision made in the heat of battle carried a logic that went far beyond physical strength. It was a mindset shaped by discipline, by reading the situation, and by the ability to act intelligently even under extreme pressure. The testudo formation, for example, demonstrated how unity and coordination can transform shields into living walls. Flanking maneuvers revealed the power of surprise and tactical awareness, destabilizing the enemy with calculated movements. The structure of the legions with their centuries and cohorts proved that organization isn't just a matter of hierarchy. It's a way of ensuring that each soldier knows exactly where they are and why they're there. And the hard and constant training reminded us that true strength comes from preparation, constancy, and the ability to resist when everything seems to be falling apart. Weapons and equipment such as the gladius, pilum, and scutum were not just tools of war. They were extensions of Roman strategy, designed to solve specific problems and generate psychological advantage. And when we look at battles like Alesia and Zama, we can see these tactics in action, shaping the fate of empires, revealing behind-the-scenes decisions that changed the course of history. The comparison with modern strategies only reinforces how ahead of their time the Romans were. They didn't have drones, but they had vision. They didn't have satellites, but they had logic. And this teaches us that true transformation begins in the way we think, plan, and execute. All of this builds a fascinating journey, where each element connects and reveals a hidden truth. Winning isn't just about attacking, it's about understanding, adapting, resisting, and making clear decisions. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson the Roman warriors have left us. Because even in such a different world, the principles that guided their actions remain alive, pulsing in every well-executed strategy, in every inspiring leader, in every group united by a greater purpose. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. If this dive into the strategic minds of Roman warriors made you see history as a powerful source of practical wisdom, if you've made it this far, you've already realized that behind the spears, shields, and formations lies a strategic mind that shaped not only battles, but a way of thinking that spans centuries. And if this content brought you new ideas, reflections, or even that feeling of, wow, I've never seen it from this angle, it's worth continuing this journey with us. Subscribing to the channel is a simple way to say, I want more of this, and helps this space grow with purpose, delivering ever more stories that make sense. Oh, and if this video connected with you in any way, please leave a like, not just because you enjoyed it, but because it shows that this kind of conversation is worthwhile. And to let me know you stuck it out, comment, I'm with you until the end. It's always good to know who's walking this journey with you. There's a video here that complements this subject. Click and continue with me there. The next story also has revelations that will surprise you.